I'm 83 years old, and I've been sitting in this same chair for most of the afternoon, trying to remember what it felt like to be myself. Not the version of me that other people liked, not the version that kept things smooth, just me. It's a strange thing to admit at the end of a life, that you spent most of it trying to be approved of, and you forgot who you were without that approval. I'm not telling you this because I want anyone to feel sorry for me. I'm past the age where pity helps. I'm telling you because I can feel time thinning out in front of me like the last pages of a book, and I don't want to leave without saying something honest. I spent 52 years chasing approval, and somewhere along the way, I lost my own identity. Even saying that out loud feels embarrassing. Because from the outside, I had what people call a good life. I worked hard. I didn't get into trouble. I stayed married. I raised children. I paid bills. I showed up to church. I shook hands. I smiled at the right times. I knew how to be respectable. But respectability can be a costume you wear so long, you forget your own skin. These days, I wake up earlier than I need to. My body does that now. The house is quiet. My wife is gone. The kids are grown and busy. The phone doesn't ring much unless someone needs information or a favor. I make coffee. I stare out the window. Some mornings I try to think of a simple question like, what do I like? Not what I chose because it impressed someone, not what I learned to like because it got me praised. What do I actually like? And the truth is, I struggle to answer. That's what I mean when I say I lost my identity. It's not some dramatic thing. It's not like I woke up one day and didn't recognize my face. It's quieter than that. It's realizing you don't know what your own voice sounds like when it isn't trying to please. I wasn't born this way, at least I don't think I was. I think I was made. I grew up in a house where approval was rare and heavy. My father didn't hand it out like candy. He handed it out like a medal, and only when he felt you'd earned it. He wasn't a monster. He was a man from his time. He worked himself sore. He believed softness made boys weak. He believed praise spoiled children. He believed a father's job was to prepare you for the world, not comfort you. So in our house, love wasn't spoken. It was implied if you behaved properly. If you did well in school, he would nod once, not smile, just nod. If you messed up, he wouldn't yell much. He'd get quiet, and that quiet felt like punishment that lasted longer than anger. My mother tried to fill the space, but she was tired, and she had her own ways of surviving. She kept the house running, kept things clean, kept us fed. She didn't talk about feelings either. Feelings were something you swallowed so the day could continue. As a boy, I learned quickly what got me noticed. Good grades, polite manners, helping without being asked, not needing much. I became the kind of child adults liked, the good boy, the mature one, the one who didn't cause problems. And every time someone said, "You're such a good kid," something in me warmed up like a small fire. I didn't know that fire would become the thing I lived for. When I was 17, I won a scholarship. My father didn't hug me, he didn't say he was proud, but he told my uncle at dinner he did all right. I remember that night like it was carved into my bones. I remember how my chest felt, like I could finally breathe. That's when I learned the trade. If I achieve, I'm safe. If I impress, I'm valued. And if I stop impressing, I disappear. So when I left home and became a young man, I didn't ask myself what I wanted. I asked myself what would be respected. I chose a field that sounded solid. Accounting, numbers, clean, dependable work. People respected it. It sounded like stability. It sounded like a man who had his life together. I wasn't unhappy at first. It felt good to do things right. It felt good to be seen as competent. My bosses liked me because I was reliable. I stayed late. I didn't complain. I did the work that no one else wanted. They called me a hard worker. And every time I heard it, that old hunger inside me calmed down for a minute. I married young. I was 25 and she was 23. Her name was Alina. She was bright and warm, and she laughed easily. She had opinions. She liked books and music and little weekend trips. She wanted a life that felt alive. She liked that I was steady. She thought my seriousness meant depth. I didn't correct her. In the early years, I tried. I really did. I bought her flowers because husbands did that. I took her to dinner when we could afford it. I remembered birthdays. I tried to be what a good husband looked like. But I didn't know how to be honest about myself because I didn't know who I was. I was always watching, listening for signals, adjusting. If Alina seemed disappointed, I would get anxious and fix something practical. If she seemed proud of me, I would work harder to keep that look on her face. I didn't think of it as chasing approval. I thought of it as being responsible. That's how it sneaks in. You tell yourself you're being good. But being good can become a cage when you do it for praise instead of truth. The years passed in a normal way. Kids came, 2 of them, a boy and a girl. Bills came, responsibilities stacked up like dishes. I worked more. Elena stayed home for a while and then worked part-time when the kids were older. From the outside, it was a regular life. We weren't famous, we weren't rich, we weren't tragic. But something was happening quietly inside me. I started losing track of what I felt. Not because I was numb. Because I didn't think my feelings mattered unless they were approved of. If I felt tired, I told myself not to be weak. If I felt lonely, I told myself to be grateful. If I felt angry, I turned it into productivity. If I felt joy, I kept it small so it wouldn't look foolish. I became a man who could function anywhere, but couldn't relax anywhere. I remember one small moment that still stings. I must have been in my early 30s. A friend from work invited me to join a community theater group. Nothing fancy, just local people. They needed someone to help with sets and maybe act a small role. He said, "You'd be good at it, it's fun." For a second, I felt something in me light up. Not approval, interest, curiosity, the thought of doing something for joy. Then my mind answered quickly, like a guard dog. "That's silly. That's not respectable. That's a waste of time." So I laughed and said, "Not really my thing." And the moment passed. Years later, I can't even remember what my thing was supposed to be. I just remember how easily I shut myself down. That's the slow cost. Not one big disaster. Just 1,000 small denials. Denials you call maturity. Denials you call practicality. Denials you call being a good man. At work I climbed, not high but steadily. I got promotions, I got recognition, plaques, certificates, handshakes at holiday dinners, a few speeches where someone said my name and people clapped. I smiled, I thanked them, I felt that familiar warmth. But it never lasted. Approval is like that, it fades and then you need it again. So I chased more. More responsibility. More hours. More being needed. And it came at a cost I didn't notice until it was too late. My kids grew up with a father who was present, but not really present. I was at the table, but thinking about work. I was at the game, but checking my watch. I was in the house, but my mind was elsewhere, trying to stay ahead, trying to stay useful. My son once asked me, "Dad, do you even like your job?" He was about 15. We were in the garage. I was fixing something that didn't need fixing. I said, "It's a good job." He said, "That's not what I asked." I remember feeling irritated, not at him, but at the question. It felt dangerous, like he was pulling at a thread that might unravel me. So I said, "Don't worry about it, just focus on school." And I went back to the tool in my hand, because tools were easier than truth. Elena tried to talk to me over the years. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't unreasonable. She'd say small things like, "You don't seem happy," or "Where do you go inside your head?" or "I miss you." And I would respond like a man, trying to pass an exam. I'd say the right words, I'm fine, just tired, things will slow down soon. Soon became a lie I repeated for decades. The worst part is, I believed it. I kept thinking there would be a point where the work would ease, the kids would settle, the money would be enough, and then I'd finally live. But my life was already happening, and I was treating it like a waiting room. The approval chasing showed up everywhere. At church, I volunteered too much because being helpful made people like me. In the neighborhood, I fixed people's fences and carried groceries and smiled politely because being seen as a good man kept me safe. Even in my marriage, I was performing the role of good husband more than actually being a partner. I didn't cheat, I didn't gamble, I didn't drink too much, I didn't break big rules. But I broke something quieter. I broke my own honesty. And because I wasn't honest with myself, I couldn't be fully honest with anyone else. The turning point didn't come with fireworks. It came with a hospital smell. I was 77 when Elena had a stroke, not a massive one, but enough. Enough to change her speech, her balance, her confidence, enough to make the future feel shorter and sharper. I sat by her bed and listened to the machines. I watched her try to form words. I watched her eyes search mine for comfort. And in that room, something awful became clear. I didn't know who I was without her needing me. I had spent a lifetime being what other people wanted, and now the person closest to me was fragile, and I didn't have a solid self to stand on. I had usefulness, I had duty, I had habits. But I didn't have a clear inner voice. Elena recovered some, but she was never the same. The woman who used to laugh easily became quieter. She tired faster. She looked older overnight. One evening, months later, she sat in the living room with a blanket over her legs. The kids were grown by then. The house was mostly quiet. She said slowly, "Do you ever feel like we missed ourselves?" That sentence knocked the air out of me. Because it was so simple. And it was true. We missed ourselves. We missed the chance to be young and messy and honest. We missed the chance to take risks for joy. We missed the chance to talk plainly. We missed each other in small ways for years. I wanted to answer her honestly. I wanted to say, yes, and I'm sorry, I didn't know how to stop. But my old reflex kicked in. The reflex that says, don't say the wrong thing. Don't look weak. Don't admit failure. So I said something safe. I did what I had to do. Elena looked at me for a long time. Then she nodded, almost like she expected it. And she said, "That's what you always say." 2 years after her stroke, she got pneumonia and it took her fast. Not in one dramatic night, just a decline that didn't reverse. In the last week, she was lucid sometimes, confused sometimes. She held my hand and stared at me like she was trying to memorize my face. One night she whispered, "Who are you when nobody's watching?" I could have cried right then. I could have told her the truth. But I didn't. Because I didn't know. That's the part that haunts me. The woman who lived beside me for more than 50 years asked me who I was, and I didn't have an answer. After she died, people came by. They said I'd been a good husband. They said I'd taken care of her. They said, "You were devoted." I nodded and thanked them. But in the quiet, after the condolences stopped, I felt something empty that I couldn't explain. It wasn't just grief. It was the collapse of the role I had been playing. For 52 years, I knew who to be: the dependable man, the good worker, the responsible husband, the father who provides, the neighbor who helps, the person who gets approval. Then suddenly, there was no audience. No one to impress at breakfast. No one to earn points from. No one to prove myself to. And in that silence, I realized I didn't know how to be alone with myself. I tried small things. I tried hobbies, gardening, reading more, walking. But even then, I caught myself doing them like a performance, like I needed a reason that would sound respectable if someone asked. I'd think walking is good for health, instead of simply, I like being outside. I'd choose books that sounded intelligent instead of books that made me feel something. Approval had even invaded my private life. That's how deep it went. What can't be fixed is the time. I can't go back and ask my younger self what he actually wanted. I can't go back and tell my son, you were right to ask that question. I can't go back and answer Alina properly when she said she missed me. I can't go back and sit in that hospital room and suddenly become a man with an honest voice. The years are gone, and they're not just gone like numbers, they're gone like chances. Chances to choose differently. Chances to be real. Chances to be known. I used to think identity was something solid you were born with, like a name. Now I think it's something you build by being honest, again and again, even when it costs you something. And I didn't build it. I built a safe image instead. The sad part is, approval doesn't hold you at night. It doesn't sit with you when you're scared. It doesn't speak your name with love. It fades the moment the room changes. I'm saying this quietly because that's how the truth is for me. Quiet, heavy. Not dramatic. If you're listening to this, I'm not here to tell you what you should do. I don't trust my shoulds anymore. My whole life was made of shoulds. I can only tell you what I wish I had understood. I wish I had known that being liked is not the same as being known. People liked me, yes, but they didn't know me because I didn't show them. I didn't even know me. I wish I had known that it's possible to live a respectable life and still feel like a stranger inside it. I wish I had known that approval can become a quiet addiction. You don't notice it because it looks like success. It looks like responsibility. It looks like being good. But it can hollow you out. It can make you so careful, so polished, so acceptable that you forget what you actually feel. And then, at the end, you're left with a life that looks complete on paper, but feels unfinished in your chest. If there's someone in your life who only knows the good version of you, the useful version, the agreeable version, I understand why. It feels safe to be that person. It keeps things smooth. But smooth isn't the same as alive. I learned that too late. Now, in my 80s, I have small moments where I catch a glimpse of myself. A real one. It's usually when no one is around. When I laugh at something and don't worry how it sounds. When I cry and don't rush to stop. When I say out loud, I don't know, and let it be true. Those moments are small, but they feel more real than the awards on my shelf ever did. If this meant something to you, if it made you think of your own life in a quiet way, you can share a thought in the comments if you're willing. Not for me, just so you're not carrying it alone. I'm 83 now. I don't have decades left to reinvent myself. I can feel the limits. The body reminds you the world moves on without you asking permission. But I can do one thing now that I didn't do for most of my life. I can tell the truth. The truth is, I spent 52 years trying to be approved of, and I let that chase decide my job, my habits, my marriage, my fatherhood, my friendships, even my silence. And when the applause faded, I realized I didn't know who I was underneath it. So this is where I am. An old man in a quiet house, learning late how to sit with himself. Not heroic, not inspiring. Just honest. And if there's any peace in that, it's a quiet kind. The kind that comes when you stop performing, even if it's the last thing you do.